1-0. We're on, I think. Are we on?
Oh, we are on.
Yes, we are on.
All right, good evening, everybody. Welcome to Hoops HD's Under the Radar podcast, streaming to you live on tape delay here on Wednesday evening, November 23rd. Recording a little earlier in the evening than normal, around a 7:30 Eastern start time for our recording. So anything that happens late tonight that we don't discuss, there's a reason why. But I'm your host.
Vermont upsets Houston. Our apologies in advance.
Yeah. I'm your host, Chad Sherwood. That is John Stalico off to my side, I believe over that way, or maybe over that way. I can't quite tell on these screens. And David Griggs is supposed to be with us, but we got a picture of him running for president.
Well, a couple things. First, it's important that you get out and vote. Every vote counts, and I need your vote. So there's that aspect of it.
David. You know the election's over.
Well, I mean, that's why people need to hurry before it's too late.
I think we have another problem, Dave, is because, as you'll see on my screen, there's a bunch of places where David G. Puppet is no longer allowed to appear.
Well, about that,
Kansas, Missouri, you're not allowed in Nebraska? David, what did you do?
I mean, there it is. Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade. There've been some technicalities issues. I mean, apparently I didn't follow proper procedure, and I don't know what they mean by inappropriate unwholesomeness of the balloon. But I'm afraid, Chad, they're not going to let us use the balloon.
Well, how about a float instead?
Balloon or float.
Oh,
they said that something about proper procedure, like. Why the hell didn't you give? They looked at me like I was fool. They had the gall to look at me like I was the one that didn't know what I was doing. They said, you needed this paperwork in months ago. Who the hell are you? And now I'm kicked out. Now, I don't know if I'm kicked out of Macy's everywhere or just banned from the parade.
Well, David, there is still one option. We know Santa Claus comes at the end of the parade. You can always ride on his lap.
Well, that's what I'm going to try. That might be a last resort.
That might be even worse. I don't want to go there. But this
not supposed to have people on my lap.
This is our Under the Radar podcast where we do review the 22 Under the Radar conferences. Under the Radar means that you are not a major conference, which includes the Power 6 conferences, ACC, Big East, Big 10, Big 12, SEC, Pac-12, Power 5 in the Big East, I guess 6 top conferences. Also can't be a member of the American, the Atlantic 10, the West Coast Conference, or for some reason the Mountain West Conference is not on this show.
Mountain West is making a run to get on this show, though. In another year or two, they may be there.
I'm actually interested in that, John. We're not discussing the Mountain West in our Hoops HD report. We're not discussing it here. Maybe we need our own Mountain West show.
I think given the events of today, we could also justify swapping the Mountain West and the Missouri Valley conferences for a few weeks.
Yeah, we're going to get to that here real soon, actually, the discussion about the Missouri Valley Conference, because that conference is still eligible. All teams in it, including Wichita State, as long as they're not in the top 25, they are under the radar technically. I don't expect that to make it another week. I didn't expect it to make it this week. I definitely don't expect it to make it another week.
Yeah, if they win the battle for Atlanta.
I think if they win one more game even, I don't think they need to win 2 more.
Yeah.
But I guess on that note, we do want to go through the conferences. What I'm going to do is I'm going to pull up on the screen right here. We should see coming up in a second or so. Maybe not. Maybe so. Is it there?
It's coming. Yeah, there it is. The American East. And there is the team of the people right there.
Yes. Our good friend WarrenNolan.com. We're showing shots from his website right here to go over the standings. And we're starting the America East. We go through these conferences alphabetically. David, you noted this in the notes today. UMBC is out to an undefeated start here, 3-0 against D1, I believe 4-0 or 5-0 overall right now.
Yeah, and that's, I mean, in the grand scheme of things, that's pretty unremarkable. But in this specific scheme of things, that's pretty remarkable considering that they have been nowhere near double-digit wins for the past several years. To start off unbeaten, no matter who they've been playing, is a huge improvement there. So a bit surprising that they're let's pull them up. I know that they haven't done much, but yeah, just give them a little click.
Okay, a little click here. Here we go. We're going to scroll down, pull up the schedule. Yeah, they beat Maryland Eastern Shore, Delaware State.
They've yet to beat a team that's won a game.
And it looks like they're actually down right now to Navy. So
yeah, so They're down the. Okay, never mind.
But there's our love for UMBC. But John, let me pull the standings back up. This Vermont team is out to a fairly nice 4-1 start. Does a team of the people, New Hampshire, have a little problem with them this year?
Well, they're going to be playing each other twice this year, although Vermont has gotten off to the better start right now, though their only loss was, I believe, a spanking against Providence. But as we alluded to earlier in the show, they've gotten 2 wins so far in the Gulf Coast Showcase. Wofford, a team that went 0-3 there, and then Hofstra, which is another team that's still in progress right now.
Yeah, so it's a fairly nice 5-1 if we include the win over Linden State start for the Catamounts. David, the team of the people, after back-to-back losses at home to Abilene Christian and at West Virginia, in a game we're not going to discuss ever again, did beat up on Detroit today.
Yeah, and again, improving to 2-2, and if you look at it, ranked teams would lose at a place like West Virginia, so you can't really fault them for that. And Abilene Christian, I mean, my God, did you see how badly they outplayed Abilene Christian in the last 10 minutes of that game? Now, we could get into unimportant, technicalities like what happened in the first 30 minutes of that game, but I'm more concerned with the truth. And the truth is they outplayed them in the last 10 minutes of the game. They looked like a ranked team, and I'm still thinking that we need to get UNH into the rankings.
Well, I want to highlight something right here for UNH's schedule, which is up on the screen here. December 31st.
Yes.
This is the battle at Dartmouth. It is the battle, I guess, of the Granite State. I don't think I've actually looked around. There isn't really any name for this rivalry, though there really should be.
The Granite State shootout.
Maybe that's what we're going to call it. But David, I think we need to do something here to highlight this rivalry here. It is coming up on Saturday, December 31st, and I think we need to call upon the legislature of the state of Vermont.
Yes.
The incoming governor, Sununu, who's going to be not sworn into a few days after this, but I think we need to make this date a holiday. We need to close all the state offices Saturday, December 31st. Nobody should have to work.
No one
should.
This game. Yeah, and again, I don't think. And I'm going all out on this. I don't think schools should be open on Saturday that day. I don't think anybody should have to go to work. No state offices, just a state holiday, a day of rest for that Saturday against Dartmouth for the Battle of the
For that Saturday, New Year's Eve, we need it.
Yes.
You can also tweet at who is now Governor Maggie Hassan, but will soon be Senator Maggie Hassan as she goes to Washington in a few weeks.
Well, how come no one's really no one ever called me to concede, so should I just assume that I won?
Let's move on here. I think we spent enough time on the American East at this point. We're going to move on to the Atlantic Sun here. We've got the standings now coming up on the screen here. Everybody with at least 2 losses so far, although Florida Gulf Coast, we talked about this during our Hoops HD report, a very good showing against Michigan State, David.
Yeah, real good. Probably better than anybody else in the conference has looked up to this point. I was kind of big on North Florida. I'm a little surprised that – not that they haven't so much won, but that they've looked kind of pathetic in some of their games. But Gulf Coast, if you pulled them up there –
pull up Gulf Coast?
I don't know. I was already – yeah, sure. Go ahead.
Gulf Coast, the loss to Florida, the win over Arlington.
Yeah, these are their losses. Florida, who creamed them, but really strong showing against Baylor, who's in the rankings unbeaten. They looked a lot better against Baylor than Oregon did. Not saying that this is a team that's on Oregon's caliber, but I'm saying it was a good showing. And against Michigan State, under crazy circumstances, I think they win the night. I think they can beat Long Beach. They have a lot of winnable games coming up. This is a good Gulf Coast team. They've looked better. I know it's early, but right now they've looked better than anybody else in the conference.
Yeah, big game coming up against Ave Maria. You excited for that one, Stalika?
No, I'm not.
Well, I get excited for that every time I hear that at church, but that's another story.
I'm not allowed in church.
David, I think you would combust if you entered a church.
Not without reconciliation.
Big Sky Conference that we really haven't seen much out of so far this year. The best start probably Idaho at just a 2-1. But John, anything that you've seen so far out of the Big Sky? Not that there's much here.
Well, I believe Eastern Washington actually did win one of the exempt events. It was the undercard for, I think it was the Legends Classic. Yes, it was the Legends Classic.
They did host it. They had home wins over Bryant and Seattle, so it's not that great of a victory.
Yeah.
Though.
But as you can see, towards the end of December, they're going to have a huge test coming up.
Oh, yes. Great Falls. I see that. But that's early December, John.
Yeah.
Is that what you're talking about?
You're sure I wasn't talking about Northern Kentucky?
Oh, maybe that's what we meant. David, anything about the Big Sky?
No, they ruined their tournament.
They ruined the tournament. Yeah, they did. For those of you that were not aware, the Big Sky
ruined their tournament.
Used to play at the home site of the regular season champion. They no longer do so. Do want to point out one other team here, North Dakota, in the middle of the screen there. Record against Division I, 0-0. They have played 3 games. They are undefeated. They have beaten Crown. They have beaten Mayville State. And they have a huge win over Presentation College. Congrats to the Fighting Hawks of North Dakota.
And we thought Utah had a soft start to the year with non-D1 foes.
Oh, Lord.
Oh, no. Did I just lose the screen there? What happened? Okay, I think we're back.
Yeah.
I think I clicked on one of Warren's ads here.
Oh, boy. Yeah, savor the Bertoli brought to you.
Okay. Do we have the screen back here?
Yes, it's back.
Okay. Pulling up the Big South Conference next, David. Let me start with you here. Winthrop, up to 2-1 start, including a huge upset victory the other night.
Yeah, well, or was it? I mean, I guess I guess it was an upset going to Illinois and winning, but this is a pretty good Winthrop team. They stuck with Florida State for about 30 minutes. They were right in there. They've kind of played a tough schedule, and it up to now, again, they've looked better than anyone else in the conference. Their paper's probably better than anyone else in the conference. Winning handily against Manhattan. Playing Florida State as close as they did. At least I know the final score. Florida State finally ran away from them, but again, a good team. Now, I don't like their chances on Sunday.
John, I was going to ask you about that. This is the game of the weekend. I can pretty much guarantee you this is your under-the-radar game of the day for Sunday. In Rock Hill, South Carolina, they're playing New Hampshire.
Yep, as part of the unbracketed portion of the NIT season tip-off. And that also includes a game against Manhattan they played a couple weeks ago as part of the tip-off marathon. I also commend anyone that was able to sit through Manhattan and Winthrop and Jasper's awesome basketball floor.
Yeah. Well, the NIT is ridiculous. It used to be if you won, you advanced. Now if you lose, you advance if you're Illinois.
Yeah. Yeah, but the big game, we'll definitely all be watching that coming up Sunday against New Hampshire.
Well, I don't know. I forget who Illinois is playing, but I guarantee you it's not as interesting.
No, it's not. Okay, moving on to the Big West. John, UC Davis out to a 3-1 start. Hawaii 2-2. I believe Davis is up in Alaska, part of the Great Alaska Shootout. I think they're the 1:30 a.m. game tonight, maybe even.
Yep, I believe that's also going to be televised on CBS Sports Network. And UC Davis also got a nice win over area rival Sacramento State in the first collegiate game ever played at the Golden One Center in Sacramento.
Yeah, I don't think I may have lost the screen share for a second there. I think I've got it back. But that is it's actually tomorrow night's game, UC Davis against Weber State. David, anything here in the Big West, though, that's really standing out?
Not when you look at that. I have liked how Irvine's played. I think that they're probably, although they don't have the paper that Davis has, we're only 4 games in, and I think that they've looked as good as anybody else that I've seen out of this league. Long Beach State, I mean, come on, just beat somebody.
It's funny that you mentioned Irvine because they actually had a very good shot earlier in the week to knock off Cal and Berkeley, but they were not quite able to finish that.
If Long Beach State were 1-4 instead of 0-5 against Div 1 competition, would we be talking about how they're clearly better than everybody else in this league?
I think we would be. I'm just going to pull up Cal State Northridge here as another team. They lost to Stanford. They beat Northern Illinois, lost to UCLA. Just bring them up because as of just a funny note early this season, this is the number 1 strength of schedule in the nation apparently at this point. I'm not sure why that's stronger than Long Beach's, but However, it's just
At this
calculated.
point is the key term. Well,
However, that is calculated at this point. It's just one of those coincidences.
I can tell you if you're interested. If you look at the records, 4-0, 4-0, 2-1,
Mm-hmm.
Illinois, that's calculated in strength of schedule is 2-0. So the way that's calculated, everybody they've played is unbeaten.
See, had they lost, though, then their combined opponents' records would have been 11-0. So they need to get with the program if they want to.
Right, yeah.
To the number
10-0, which is
let's move over to the Colonial. And David, we've been very high in this UNC Wilmington team early in the season. They've given us no reason to doubt them as of yet.
Yeah, and again, looking at everybody else, they are still who I believe the best team to be out of this conference. I still like their chances. I think they're a fringe bubble team. I think they are good enough to land inside of it if it's – again, they have very limited opportunities, though. But there's nobody else. Northeastern's looked okay at times. Charleston's looked okay at times. I've been most impressed by this Wilmington team.
Yeah, and as we record this, Charleston's getting beaten up pretty bad by Villanova. William and Mary within 10 of Duke heading towards halftime, but I expect Duke to end up winning this one going away.
Towson did have a shot of getting a scalp at Maryland, but they too failed to pull that off in the final minutes.
Yeah. Towson's going to – Pat Scary's got it going on there. And he required his players to vote. Hopefully they voted for me.
They were just required to vote. Their votes very well could have gone to you, David.
Yeah.
Conference USA. Let's start by talking about the middle conference here. UAB. After the first 10 minutes, a fairly game performance the rest of the way against Kansas, David.
Yeah, they did. They kind of hung in there and made it respectable after falling down. I think was it 20-1 or 20? It was
bad.
Yeah, I mean it's like I thought this would be a 20-point-ish margin, and UAB did not waste any time getting it to that. But they did. They fought back. They kind of relaxed, and then they went out. And then in the third place game yesterday, led GW pretty much the entire way. GW did make a run at it. But a nice neutral floor win for UAB against George Washington. Still reeling from, well, first of all, the paper loss to Furman. That's going to hurt. And then just not having Nick Norton for the year is going to hurt. But not a bad showing in this tournament, I didn't think.
Meanwhile, if you're able to find Access TV on your cable package, you'll probably be able to see Old Dominion for the next 3 nights.
Yeah, it's 360 or 340 DirecTV, I think.
Yeah. A couple of teams here. We note that Marshall and Old Dominion are undefeated. I do still like this Western Kentucky team. They do have the one loss so far. They struggled a little bit with Jacksonville State the other night as well, though.
Kind of surprisingly.
I've got to bring this up just because I think that Warren's going to show us a score here. Florida International, a bad team. This is probably the only time we discuss them all year, but there it is right there, heading towards halftime. They are in a tight game with Ave Maria on. In fact, I've got an update that it has gone to half, and it is tied at 32 right now.
Shut the program down. Shut it down.
FIU, last time we're going to discuss you all season.
Oh, that's horrible.
But let's move on to the next conference. And, John, let me start with you. We're going to go over to the Horizon League and the Valparaiso Crusaders, and most notably here.
Yep, they're part of the MGM Grand Men Who Speak Up main event. They got a win last night against Alabama. No, 2 nights ago against Alabama, and now they have a chance to take on BYU for a title out in Vegas.
And again, as you all are watching this, you will know the results of that game. David, can you tell us about how that BYU-Valpo game went that everyone already knows the results from?
Yeah, I mean, I was really impressed with that game. It was a good game. It turned out exactly as I expected.
So this is what you get with live on tape delay feeds here. You get descriptions of games that we haven't even seen yet.
Yeah, I mean,
there's no explanation for why there was a 10 or 20 minute delay.
Yeah, well, I mean, in this game, I think it's it's actually a highly important game from under the radar standards. It might be one of the more important games all week because Valpo needs quality wins, and they have very few opportunities at that. Beating BYU on a neutral floor, if they want to make a case to the committee, that's the kind of win they need to get.
Yeah, and let's take a look at their schedule, what they've got coming up beyond this BYU game. They do have Rhode Island. It's a home game, a trip to Kentucky, those are going to be their only two chances to really score notable wins.
Kentucky is, I mean, if they were to pull that off, then of course, that they're way inside the bubble most likely. But realistically, Alabama, BYU, that might be their whole case. Maybe they beat Alabama, they beat BYU, and they avoided bad losses.
And both Ball State and Rhode Island are return games from last year where Valparaiso had some notable road games.
Yeah.
And that's why I'm circling that Rhode Island game. I think that could be a huge game for them. If they pick up this BYU win and the Rhodey win, I think all they need to do is avoid any more than one bad loss the rest of the way,
Right, yeah.
And they're there. You can probably afford a bad loss. But
so big game tonight and on YouTube tonight. So,
on YouTube, I think it's actually going to be televised as well. But
yes, that's ESPN2, the Men Who Speak Up Championship.
Okay. Well, I mean, I'm never mind.
The people spoke up, puppets. That's all you have to know.
The puppets who toast for social
puppets
justice.
who speak up. Let's move over to the Ivy League. John, we actually thought that both Harvard and Princeton had shots to maybe even put up at-large type of resumes this season. Is it done already for both of them?
It's going to be pretty hard for Harvard when one of those losses is going to be Holy Cross. I mean, Stanford was forgivable, but we'll have to see about Princeton and everyone else in the conference.
And to that point, Chad, like these games matter now. Like the Ivy League, you can't just shrug it off and be like, oh, ho hum, it's all about league play in first place. It's not. You need to be inside the bubble in case you lose in your conference tournament. So I know I have, and I'm pretty sure the two of you have too. When you watch Ivy League basketball now, you watch it differently.
Yeah, and as you can see, they're even struggling at Lafayette tonight as we record this. They're up by 5 at halftime, but Princeton really starting to disappoint me so far, and it may just be setting us up for a one team league here, a one bid league here from the Ivy.
What about Yale? I really thought they were going to win at Pittsburgh. They did not. And again, they kind of need that win now, whereas in the past they really didn't. Now, if you want to be inside the bubble, now they did have the nice win at Washington. The loss at Virginia is not – you expect that. I really thought they were going to go to Pitt and win. I think that's the kind of loss that might come back to hurt them, to haunt them later on, because if they finish first, it doesn't mean they're in.
The funny thing is, the puppet always talks about scheduling arrangements between different conferences, although the Ivy League and the Patriot League do have a long history of playing a number of games against each other.
Yeah, but I mean, the one thing I'll say for Yale, they've got a lot of non-conference road games left at places that are tough to win, at Vermont, at Temple most notably. And I mean, I think Albany's going to be a decent team again this year as well. That's a home game. If they can run this schedule, which is possible, they don't have any names here that are not beatable. I think that they could get in that discussion. I'm not certain that how good Yale really is versus how bad Washington is, though. And I'm not sold on this Yale team by any means yet.
Meanwhile, I'm focusing on that 349 RPI for Hartford. If you haven't checked our Twitter feed of Hoops HD, Lee Del Vecchio had quite a few tweets for the Harvard Hawks today.
Let's move over to the Metro Atlantic here, where again, a conference where everybody has at least 2 losses other than Fairfield. Monmouth and Siena were both 2 more teams that we thought might be able to put together an at-large type of resume if they really pulled things off in the non-conference schedule, and already, David, behind the 8 ball.
Behind the 8 ball and maybe off the table. Losing 3 out of your first 4. I mean, it isn't that – in the case of Siena, it wasn't that I was thinking they might be good enough. I actually thought they were, and they have just been pitiful. And, again, these are not all easy games to win, but you need to win at George Washington. Kansas is forgivable, but to go to Asheville, and no disrespect to them, and lose like that, you're not a tournament team. Tournament teams would win that game. I think tournament teams would win at GW, maybe not always, but enough of the time.
And you've also got games against Albany and St. Bonaventure coming up that they ought to be able to win as well.
Yeah, but I mean,
Bonaventure is another rivalry game between the Bonnies and Siena that's also
It really
under the
is.
radar-ish.
Yeah, it is, but it's just, I mean, how can a team that finished so strong and have that much senior leadership look this bad? It doesn't make any sense.
The other team here worth noting is this Monmouth team had that heartbreak loss to South Carolina, got rolled by Syracuse pretty bad there. The problem that I have with them this year, unlike last year, is they're really not going to have those chances. I mean, unless they beat North Carolina, which we're going to assume they're not going to do.
Right.
What do they got? They got a game at Memphis and a home game against Princeton.
Yeah, I mean, their whole case would be no bad losses. And in the past, we've seen it. That's normally not enough. And if you scroll down a little bit, just trying to look at Iona typically, are they at Iona? These are teams that typically win a large number of home games.
Yeah, this is still a 20-game regular season, so they pay everybody home and home.
Oh, okay, yeah. So
they're at Iona for the finale.
Yeah, and again, if they go into that might, like, the games at Siena and at Iona, and how much of a selling point is that? I mean, I know I'm convinced by wins like that, because although Siena and Iona might not be tournament teams, if they lose all but one or win all, if they only lose one or two home games and Monmouth can go in there and beat both of them, I think that's something. But it's still looking like a really weak case. I think they needed that win at South Carolina. I really do.
When we did our preseason podcasts and our preseason under the radar and my preseason write-up, the Mid-American Conference, I said this is a serious threat for a two-bid league. I'm still standing by it with this Ohio and Akron here in the East Division.
I'm not only standing next to you, I'm standing in front of you. I absolutely believe it. Ohio's good, and it's not – they're legitimately good.
Well, let's take a look. John, let's start with this Ohio team here, their schedule. They are undefeated heading into tonight. They are playing again on Friday against Tennessee Tech, but they've got the win at Georgia Tech that we spoke about last week as being a real chance to get a scalp, a name brand scalp. Do you see a losable game here between now and conference play?
Well, Georgia Tech was a nice name win, but Sam Houston State was also another win that could possibly be within the top 100 or top 150, depending on how things shake up in the Southland. I mean, I would watch out for a game as like Marshall, but there is kind of an old rivalry going on between the Bobcats and the Thundering Herd. But I would also look out for their game at Iona, which could be a bit of a stumbling point.
Yeah, and David, one of the things the committee does look at is wins against the field, even when those wins are against the bottom of the field, the automatic bids. Both Southern and Sam Houston could be wins against the field at the end of the day. They're both favored to win their conferences.
Now, again, how much credit are they really going to get for beating Southern at home? But, it could be.
If Southern is part of the field, it's going to be because someone upset Texas Southern, which we'll get to a little bit later.
Yeah, I want to pull up Akron's schedule as well. They do have a loss so far. But, David, if we can get this here. Okay, a little drum roll, please. Yeah, they did lose the game at Youngstown State.
Kind of surprisingly. It was, and again, they've yet to beat a team that's beaten a team, but they get tested this Friday.
Well, they get this Friday. They get Air Force,
who's unbeaten. Yeah, I think that's.
I think the better tests are coming up at Creighton, and at Gonzaga. Two huge tests. If they can steal one of those two games.
Ooh, yeah, and they might. How bad is Creighton reeling after they lost a key player for the season today?
Zach Hansen.
Yeah,
and I really think that that could be a game that this Ohio team could steal. I'm not. Normally we say, they're playing one of the top teams in the one of a top 25 caliber team. Yeah, we laugh about it with the under the radar. I think that Akron could steal this game here against Creighton.
They could. They really could. Creighton, especially if Creighton overlooks them.
And meanwhile, if we're talking about exempt tournaments, there was a new one that Chad was showing just below, which was the Savannah Invitational. We know they're going to play Air Force as part of the first bracketed game, but we don't know yet who their second opponent is going to be.
Yeah, it's a pretty weak field, though. So it's, I think it's East Carolina is in that tournament. But David, we still technically can discuss Wichita State. Is this the last time we're going to discuss them on the Under the Radar show?
Most likely, yeah. I mean, they've just been dismantling teams, and I realize that they haven't played the toughest schedule, but I mean, they just booted LSU through the ceiling and back to the mainland, I think. I mean, it was a trouncing.
Yeah, it would go, John, 82-47 today. And it was not, LSU is not a good team, but
Yeah.
the way they won the game was what really impressed me.
Yeah, this game started out, I think, 30-9 for Wichita State and didn't get much better for LSU the rest of the way.
Yeah, that's a great game tomorrow, assuming Louisville gets by Old Dominion, because, Wichita-Louisville is a good game tomorrow.
Don't be fooled by the screen. Southern Nazarene is not going to be their next opponent.
Yeah, they got 2 more games of the battle for Atlantis before that Southern Nazarene beatdown that we expect. But John, you being the Xavier guy, we got to talk a little Northern Iowa here because that's who Xavier beat. That's the only team that Northern Iowa lost to so far, and they're playing again this weekend.
Yep, this is the so-called non-bracketed game as part of the Tire Pros Invitational. I mean, they beat Arizona State, which was to be expected, and they also, again, had the nice 18-point comeback against Oklahoma and forced overtime, although even in the overtime period, they got a lead, and it got a little bit dicey in the final minutes, but given what happened last year against A&M, Northern Iowa wasn't about to allow for another meltdown.
Yeah, and I think you could take that Arizona State win with a little grain of salt here. Today, Arizona State beat the Citadel by about 10, 15 points. Just to put it in perspective, Iowa State beat the Citadel by about 100 points earlier this year. So if you can't beat Citadel by more than about 40 points, you don't deserve to be even in the Pac-12, I don't think.
Meanwhile, you don't have to take the co-college win with a grain of anything.
Yeah. David, let's move on beyond the Missouri Valley Conference here to the Northeast Conference. We keep wanting to go Mountain West there. LIU, though, after a 3-1 state start, David, and Wagner, of course, with the big win over UConn. What are you looking at here?
Well, the Wagner win over UConn might not turn out to mean anything. The committee might look at that as absolutely nothing. It might not even get them off the 16 line. LIU, again, probably the best paper so far. But again, their wins aren't anything to get too excited about. Who did they beat? Maryland, Northeastern. I forgot they did beaten them. Yeah, that's a good start for the Blackbirds.
Yeah, a little bit of a road test coming up here for them for the next 4 straight on the road, including a trip to Hartford and Leadville.
Which is a shame because their arena.
Getting paid.
Awesome. I love that arena. I'd rather go there than Minnesota.
Let's go, John. Let's go beyond the Northeast down to the Ohio Valley Conference.
You don't like Minnesota because that floor is too high for you, isn't it, David?
Right. Yeah, I can't see.
Now, last week, I know we spoke a lot about both Murray State and Belmont. We very briefly touched on this Tennessee State team. John, I'm getting higher and higher on the Tigers, though. Are you with me?
Well, they certainly had a hot start in the Cable Car Classic, but even last year we saw signs when they nearly won at Tennessee. And they also beat Middle Tennessee, which is even more significant.
They won at Middle Tennessee, David. That was a huge win. I like this Middle Tennessee team a lot. Coming off of what they did last year in the tournament with the win over Michigan State. Mm-hmm. Tonight they are pounding Canisius at half.
And that's
a road test.
A little bit of a road test. I think they get Vandy. I really do. I think they go in and win at Vandy. I think they're better than Vandy. And that the one I'm looking forward to, not to look too far ahead, is that game at NC State, because I think they can win that one.
So are we done talking about it being Murray State versus Belmont? Or do we seriously have a third team here now?
No, we seriously have a third team that's probably better than the other two. Murray didn't win at Middle.
No, and Murray lost at which was Belmont that lost at Vanderbilt as well. So Tennessee State, we may be talking about them a lot more as the season goes on. Very impressed with what they've done so far, though. David,
had Murray State not beaten Illinois State, they'd really be in dire straits.
Yeah.
David, let's turn to the Patriot League. And I know you're big on this Lehigh team, but they are just 1-2 so far now.
Yeah, the 2 losses, one was a missed last-second shot at Xavier that would have sent it to overtime. The other was in overtime at Yale. I think both are forgivable. I still like them.
Okay. John, you mentioned earlier, Holy Cross with a big win over Harvard. Are they going to become a factor now?
Well, they could have been a factor had they also been able to beat UMass at home, but they were not able to overcome the Minutemen.
Okay, so they're not going to be an at-large bid candidate, but their losses were South Carolina, who just pounded Michigan tonight, and Syracuse. Interesting game coming up over this weekend, though, against Monmouth.
Yep, that should be a nice, fun one, but they'll also have South Carolina State coming before that.
Yeah.
And
in fact, I don't think we touched up on the MEAC yet.
And a trip to the Team of People there in New Hampshire. Did we skip the MEAC?
Yeah.
I think we did skip the MEAC. Well, our apologies to MEAC fans. We did not do that. I did not do that on purpose. We do love the MEAC. David, let's jump back to them.
Let's jump back to the MEAC. And how about NC Central?
Congratulations. 2 conference wins against D1. 2 wins against D1, matching the rest of the conference combined.
Yes, but then Cookman, a little bit of excitement this week against New Mexico State, for those of you that missed it. A little bit of a show of emotion, you could say, with how many players got kicked out? Total 8.
About 8 players. I think one of the teams was down to only 6 players.
Oh, yes, that New Mexico State is where that happened.
Yeah. But it seems to be New Mexico State has some sort of blanch clearing incident every couple of years. Saw it against Utah Valley a few years ago. So.
And meanwhile, Texas Southern has as many D1, well, not D1 necessarily, but overall wins as the MEAC combined.
Yeah, but nice job by NC Central, though, 2-2 with back-to-back wins heading into the game at Northern Kentucky this weekend. They may be the team to beat here. We like South Carolina State. They haven't won a game. This is a conference where we don't really know who's that good until about the middle to end of January when they start playing each other, though.
Yeah, because, again, so many road bye games.
Over in the SoCon, Chattanooga, a very almost surprising loss at Army. So it was a neutral court game against Arkansas State, and they lost that game. And that could be the type of game that bites them at the end of the season, David, if they're on the bubble. Very
badly. I mean, yeah. That one hurt. Now, Arkansas State is off to a fantastic start, and they can overcome it, but I figured they had about 4 strikes this year, and they've used 2 of them. If they lose more than 4 games before the conference tournament of any kind, I don't think they go without the automatic bid.
Right. And John, here, they did, despite the Tennessee win, obviously got blown up by North Carolina. Next real test probably doesn't come up until December 17th at Vanderbilt.
Yep, and Vanderbilt, I think, is also going to be tested before that by Tennessee State that we had alluded to earlier. But also keep an eye on this Marshall game, who is still 4-0 themselves, because we don't know yet if they're going to be a contender or pretender in Conference USA.
Okay, and Tytel, not with us, is a selection committee guessing expert. But if you look at this schedule, Chad, are there any teams on here that are solid tournament teams? I think the answer is no. They might not even have 4 strikes. They might need to win all but one of the rest of their games.
Yeah, I mean, other than the North Carolina game, which they lost, as terms of other solid tournament teams, the only question I have is whether or not Hiwassee or Tennessee Wesleyan are solid for the NAIA tournament. But
right. So, again, I mean, because when I say 2 more strikes, I mean, like, that assumes a tournament loss. So if they lose 4 regular season games and then need an automatic bid, it will be because they lost a 5th game, and that might be too many. They might only have 1 more strike.
Yeah,
even a foul ball strike may not be enough for Chattanooga.
Yeah, so Chattanooga definitely really needs that Vanderbilt game. That becomes huge for them now. Over in the Southland Conference, we mentioned the Sam Houston State team earlier. 2-2. Corpus Christi out to a 2-0 start as well. John, anything that you've seen so far out of the Southland, and other than Abilene Christian with that huge win at the Team of the People?
I think we covered it at the beginning of the year, but we have to give Nicholls State a hand for winning at Boston College.
You don't get too much credit for that, though, do you, David?
No, you don't.
If you're a Southland program, we'll still give you credit for it.
I don't think Boston College would win the Southland.
I think they were favored in that game, weren't they? They should have been.
Yeah. All right, let's go.
Let's go. Sun Belt, Arkansas State.
Yeah. A fantastic start. South Alabama, but South Alabama real quick.
Okay, let's start with South Alabama. This is a team, South Alabama, that preseason I picked to finish second in the conference. I really thought that they were going to be able to contend here.
Yeah,
Out
nothing
to a
too
5-0 start.
exciting yet, but I mean, again, I saw a little of the Jacksonville game, and they looked pretty good. 2 winnable road games coming up. I think the first test, even though it's a home game, is that Middle Tennessee game to see how good they actually might be. But 4-0 so far. You still like them, Chad? I'm assuming you do.
I do still like them, but I've been very impressed with Arkansas State.
Oh, yeah.
Let's pull up their schedule as well here. I mean, of course,
And a
we
note on
liked
South
Arlington heading into the season.
Alabama.
Yeah.
Yeah, note on South Alabama, they actually do have a history of getting at least one at-large bid in the past.
Yeah, they have. It was South Alabama that got it, and they've had teams inside the bubble all that didn't need it. But started off loss at North Dakota State. That's forgivable, I think, because North Dakota State probably won't lose but 1 or 2 home games all year. They got the win at Georgetown. They got a win away from home against Chattanooga, who we just talked about. They just blasted Edwardsville. Not that that's hard to do. I like what this team's done. And if you see there's a really long road stretch there in the middle from December 3rd on. I don't like that game against Alabama. The game at Minnesota, I think they can win that. I like what this.
Don't forget TCU.
Yeah. I will be surprised if they don't win that.
Yeah, and the Lehigh game is a team that we liked at least to win the Patriot League, so another scalp there. So I mean, this Arkansas State team, I definitely think that they've shown they can win with both that the Georgetown game was maybe not a fluke with the way that they played against Chattanooga.
I also like how this game on December 3rd is still to be announced. I mean, is TCU trying to spring some kind of a surprise against Arkansas State?
They'll try anything.
Yeah. Let's go over to the Summit League. I'm sorry. Before we get to the Summit League, let's start with the SWAC. We don't want to leave them out.
Yeah.
And let's talk Texas Southern and talk about them seriously here. I did research only going back 15 years. In the last 15 years, I did not find a single SWAC team that had more than 3 road non-conference D1 wins. Here we go, Texas Southern. 5 games of the season, already has 4 of them, David.
Yeah, and you look at Lafayette, that's winnable. You look at
Southern Illinois.
Yeah, Southern Illinois potentially. Probably they get less and less winnable after that.
And Chad also had a nice poetic description of the LaSalle student broadcast of their game winner there.
This was actually a great finish here. LaSalle was up 2. Texas Southern had the ball with about 5 seconds left, or maybe about 2 seconds left. They got the full court pass, put up a shot at the buzzer that went in. Robinson there for Texas Southern. They won by a point at the buzzer. I was listening to it on the LaSalle broadcast, and the announcer was basically was. And the pass in to Robinson, he turns, shoots, it goes, LaSalle loses. This game brought to you by that's how it was. I mean, it was like complete deadpan. It was, if you could find it out there, go listen to it, go watch it. Trust me. But anyhow, let's move on. Beyond the SWAC, we'll move over to the Summit League.
And
the game of the week,
big night for a Summit League team.
David, you saw the end of the game. Tell us about it.
Well, I mean, IPFW led pretty much the entire way through, but they never ran away from them. And it's one of those games that you just keep thinking, you're watching it not thinking, oh, they can win this. You're watching it thinking, man, how long can they stay with Indiana? In the under 4 timeout comes, I think at the end of regulation, not overtime, at regulation, I think IPFW came up empty on their last 3 possessions. So they had chances to win it in regulation, and even when they didn't, you're like, oh, well, Indiana's going to get them in overtime. They didn't. One of the funniest things about this was the fans storm onto the court after the game, as you would expect. Tom Crean, the Indiana coach, goes to shake hands, and I guess you admire the graciousness and the sportsmanship of this, but you wonder, what he walks literally like up to the mob of people jumping up and down, trying to shake hands with players that are celebrating as the fans had stormed the court. I have never seen that before.
Well, I tell you, I've got to give credit to Tom Crean for playing this game. I mean, yes, I mean, it was the way they actually worked it out. Indiana controlled all the tickets to the game. They controlled the TV broadcast rights. That's why it was on the Big Ten Network. But they went and they played the game at Fort Wayne. Type of game that teams normally do not play. The Fort Wayne coach was unbelievably classy afterwards, thanking Tom Crean for coming and playing this game. At the end of the day, David, you mentioned this. I don't think it's going to hurt Indiana too bad.
No.
It's going to be a huge help for Fort Wayne.
Yeah. And again, like it's everybody's biggest upset ever. No, it isn't. It was unexpected, but it was not really – it wasn't the biggest upset of all time, and it really wasn't even that unusual. We've seen it before. We saw Virginia go to Green Bay and lose the year they got a 1 seed. We've seen teams, lose games before. We've seen Louisville lose at Western Kentucky and go on to get a 1 seed. I think it's one of those that just kind of fades into the background. And one of the things that drives me nuts is the whole battle cry of, well, teams shouldn't play in games like this. There you go. They have everything to gain and nothing to lose. In 2 weeks, yeah, it sucks to lose. It's embarrassing to lose to an in-state program that's of sort of like a lower caliber. But in 2 weeks, does anybody even care about this anymore?
The other funny thing is this was actually part of the Indiana Classic, which for many years just used to be a 2-game twilight doubleheader on IU's campus. But now it's just part of an exempt event that Indiana is hosting for the most part.
And
John, loss. And it came against a team that, quite frankly, is better than some of the teams at the bottom of the Big Ten.
Right. Yeah. I mean, Fort Wayne is the team we picked preseason to win the Summit League. John, Fort Wayne has a chance to be the best team in the state of Indiana coming up December 6th here, don't they?
Yep. They also go to South Bend to take on Notre Dame.
Right.
If they get that one.
Well, I guess they would have to win their games coming up against IUPUI in conference as well, but they could be the best team in the state of Indiana. Wait and find out. One more conference to go, I believe. Yes. Last year's team of the people here, we're still cheering them on, out to a bit of a rough start after the losses loss to Duke and the second loss, which slips me right now for a second. But the Grand Canyon Antelopes did bounce back to beat Albany and Marist after the Penn State loss. 2-2 now.
Yeah, they should have actually been, I guess, the champions of the undercard part of the Hall of Fame tip-off. But according to Chad on the email thread, these were not actually bracketed games, so we can't really give them a title here.
Yeah, if they weren't bracketed games, the games were preset, but given that they did go 2-0 on these games, they would be the champion of that bracket. But David, your thoughts on the Lopes so far?
I still like them. I'm a little surprised that they lost to Penn State. I was actually kind of expecting them to get that one. The home opener against Coppin State should be fun. They got Louisville coming out there in a couple of weeks. That will be that and San Diego State. That's a fun week to be a Lopes fan.
And the trip to Arizona as well.
Yeah. Now, I don't know. Is Louisville coming to campus in San Diego State for that matter, or is that in the NBA arena?
No, that is on campus is my understanding.
Okay, so that is a fun day. Enjoy that one, Lopes fans.
They do have a great arena there, in fact. So, Lopes up.
As John T. will attest from last year.
Those are going to be 2 great games.
In terms of the rest of the WAC, John, anything that you've seen here so far early in the season? We know that the Lopes still pending a waiver for this year.
UMKC, I think, was another positive development because they also went, if I'm not mistaken, 2-1 as part of an exempt event that was going on over at Bowling Green. And if we pull up some of their results, they had a win against Bowling Green, a win against Murray State, but a loss against Green Bay prevented the Roos from getting the 3-game sweep here.
Right. And they and New Mexico State probably the 2 best teams in this conference that are eligible. But let me go ahead and pull this back down here, go back to our Brady Bunch.
And they also put up a decent showing against Creighton as well in their opener, but that's a very difficult place to win.
Yeah, it is.
What I wanted to do here is very quickly go through some of the upcoming games this week that we're going to be paying attention to. want to run through them with you here. David, let me start with you. A couple really good games coming up this Friday. I'm sorry. Long Beach State's at Gulf Coast.
Yeah, that is good. When I mean, you got to admire Long Beach for the schedule they've played, and that's as good as Gulf Coast is. That might be their most winnable game so far.
John, as part of the Global Sports Classic semifinals, Western Kentucky takes on Washington. That's a very winnable game, with the winner getting either TCU or UNLV. Hilltoppers could win this tournament, couldn't they?
I hope those games are going to be more stable than my internet connection is apparently, because I'm now getting warning messages from Zoom. At least Google didn't even have the courtesy to do that when we were with them.
David, one other game is Middle Tennessee and UNC Wilmington. That game is being played in Nashville as part of the Challenge in the Music City, but another good test for Wilmington and for Middle Tennessee.
Yeah, good test for both teams. I like Middle Tennessee. I like Wilmington more. Again, if they're a tournament caliber team, that's the kind of game that I would expect them to win.
And then coming up on Saturday, as part of that same event, Middle Tennessee plays Toledo for the second time in a week. A very strange situation there. Both pre-scheduled games this season, but in order to get a fourth game of that event, they agreed to play each other twice. Very strange. Yeah. Also coming up on Saturday, we have Yale at Vermont, two teams that we discussed tonight. Coming up on Sunday, we do have a couple other notable games here, including Siena and Albany, which you mentioned earlier. And David, UAB and St. Mary's are playing in Las Vegas.
Yeah, I think that's UAB's doing the game management for that. I believe it's just odd that it would be in Las Vegas. Not really sure why it is. There should be plenty of tickets available if you're in the Las Vegas area and want to check that one out.
And John, one other game we've got coming up. This is going into at the beginning of next week. I think to Tuesday next week. One you could circle here: Rhode Island at Valpo coming up Tuesday night. Real good chance here for Valpo to make that statement win that we mentioned earlier. As well as one other game I'm looking forward to. We always look forward to Lipscomb and Belmont in the Battle of the Boulevard.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a chance for Valpo, but at the same time, it's also a chance for Rhode Island to exercise one of their own demons, because I think that's the game where E.C. Matthews got hurt last year.
Was it that one or was it before that? I don't know, but
it was that one. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, and David, a chance here for Texas Arlington to get back in the Sun Belt map as well. Their annual game at Texas coming up Tuesday night. They almost won this game last year.
Yeah, they did. Lost in overtime after leading for much of the game. And again, with Shaka Smart, not an under-the-radar team or coach. But if you want to get them, you got to get them in November, because that's when they seemingly lose half of their games.
Well, I guess on that note, actually, we haven't gone to our top 10 list yet. Let's do this real quickly. I have a top 10. I don't know if either one of you did it or not, but I can at least run through mine for you, and you guys can tear me apart here. The number one team, obviously, is Wichita State. I don't think there's any debate about that.
Yeah.
I have on the verge of being relegated up.
I have UNC Wilmington number 2 overall.
I would agree with that. I like them.
I brought in here Northern Iowa at number 3. They weren't even in the list last year.
I would have had Arkansas State all the way up here, and honestly, I think I would have had Tennessee State at 4.
Okay.
In Northern Iowa.
I tell you that I do have both those teams on the list. They're down at 9 and 10 on my list. Arkansas State does have the North Dakota State loss. Tennessee State still hasn't fully proven themselves to me with a huge win, although they're definitely on my list. My other teams here, I've at 4, 5, 6. I have Ohio, Valpo, and Akron in that order.
Yeah, I kind of forgot about Ohio. They deserve to be high.
And 7 and 8, I still have both Chattanooga and Middle Tennessee on my list. I think Middle Tennessee might be my most debatable team to still be on there, but I still have some faith in this team.
So in other words, a team like Texas Southern would have merited honorable mention for this week.
I think I would give an honorable mention to Texas Southern. That's definitely worthy with those 4 road wins against D1 teams. But I guess on that note, let me run through each of you. Any final thoughts? John, let me start with you.
Well, we heard some rumblings yesterday that the Detroit Pistons are actually going to move downtown into Little Caesars Arena with Red Wings. We're going to have to see if this possibly means that Oakland University could potentially have a new home for some of their games to move the blacktop.
I haven't heard anything about that yet, but we'll keep our ears open. David?
Again, it's just Thanksgiving, and that means two things. Well, it normally just means college basketball, which is what Thanksgiving it's all about. But this year, you need to get out and vote for me.
All right, everybody that has not yet voted, did not vote for the presidential election, you may now go out and vote. Unfortunately, the only person you can vote for is David Griggs. But
Yes, the electoral. Well, no one ever sent me. I never got a concession call, and the electoral college doesn't vote till December 19th. So,
all right, so electors, if you're out there, if you don't like
Yeah.
the election results, raise your hand and say David Griggs.
I believe the term is faithless elector.
yeah, we need some of those.
But on that note, on behalf of David Griggs and John Stalica, I'm Chad Sherwood. We do want to once again wish everybody a happy and safe Thanksgiving, and we'll talk to you again next week.